Hello and welcome back. In this video we're going to be making a chisel holder that holds my sharpening stones as well as my layout blocks for my chisel, as you see here. These blocks are measured out a distance from the edge, and based on the degree you want your chisel or plane blade sharpened, you can set that angle with those blocks. So I had this system before and I want to put all these things onto one piece of wood, which I'm doing here. So I start by measuring, marking out what my rough length is for the piece, so I can cut it here at the table saw with the crosscut sled, and I could start the process of making it. Once I get that board cut down to length and width, I'm putting it through the planer here, and I'm running it through with another board just to minimize the snipe on the back of that first board, which is the one I want to use. I'm just doing this to clean off that paint and get a relatively flat surface, as this was an old shelf at one point. Now I'm just checking to see if it's flat, and it is. Now I'm doing the layout of those stones there, just measuring an inch from each side, and then centering those stones in between so I can mark the widths. Part of the drawback of the previous one I had was I had these stones locked into place, so it made them difficult to use, where these ones will be removable. So now I'm marking my left and right sides here. Now I can remove those pieces. I start by using a large Forstner bit and drilling a hole in the middle just so I can reference with my router there, as you can see, just so it has a place to cut. Now setting up with the router here with a 3/4 inch bit in it, I'm just cutting out, getting as close to that line as I can. And you can see a better shot of that here. Just cutting along to that line as close as I can with that 3/4 inch router bit. And just coming through and repeating that on all three pieces. I do the old sanity check to make sure it makes sense. I'm coming back through with a chisel here to clean up those edges and finish removing that waste from the inside of the cuts. And this will give a pretty tight fit. I don't want it to be super tight because I want to be able to pop these stones out and move them if I want. But I check the fit, and then I have to remove a little bit more material, so I do that. And then test fitting again, I get a perfect tight fit on that joint. And I repeat that process with the chisel on the other two cutouts. And that's what I'm left with. Now I'm cutting out those reference boards that the chisel rests against to determine whether it's 25 or 30 degrees. I'm just using some plywood as it doesn't move at all. And since this project will be painted, I'm not worried about the plywood edges being exposed. I end up cutting more than I need here, but it's always good to have more than not enough. And since it's scrap wood, I'm not too concerned about it. So I cut my pieces, 2 for each plane and chisel, as the angles are slightly different. Now using this reference sheet here that came with the chisel guide, I'm setting those depths and just double checking them with a ruler, as I don't like the tenths on this particular square. And I'll just double checking those measurements again. And then I come through and mark the other side. So it's approximately 3/4 inches wide. And then that gives me a new spot that I can cut out. I'm doing the same process as before, starting with the Forstner bit just making a deep enough slot that I can begin with the router. And then I come through with my small router this time and just create a slight indentation so that when I put those chisels in, they rest against the face of the plywood as opposed to my previous version, which sometimes went underneath. After cleaning it up with the chisel, as previously, I can test fit them in the similar method that I use for the stones, sneaking up on those lines to make sure I get a nice tight fit. Now we're taking it down here to my basement shop where I'm going to put some wood filler into those exposed holes there from the previous nails and screws. And once again, as this is going to be painted, these will never be seen, and this wood filler will hide those. Now after sanding, I sanded those rough spots down. Now I'm attaching the reference blocks in here with some glue. I tried to be careful to avoid squeeze out, so I skipped that one there after I realized there was a lot of glue in there. Then I wiped it off camera, and I'll just clean up the little bit of glue squeeze out that resulted. Now I'm making the bottom ledger piece, which will go at the front side of the chisel and sharpener holder, and then when you push it up against a bench, it stops it from sliding around, so it gives you a little bit of a hold. Now I'm measuring the length of it here. This is all scrap wood as well, as it'll be painted. I just make that cut, and then I'll attach it here. You can see how that works. That edge bumps up against whatever surface you're working on so that the board doesn't slide around when you're sharpening. I'm just pre-drilling and adding some screws. I don't glue this piece, just as in case I ever want to move it or change anything. But that's how it works. It bumps up against the side of that bench there so that you're able to work. Now I'm using some leftover paint that I use for these type of projects, the Bear Marquee Red. I can put the actual name in the description, but it's like a classic red look. And I have it on hand, so I'll use it. I put one coat on camera, and I follow up by sanding in between and doing 2 or 3 coats. Followed up by a coat of polyacrylic across the whole surface. Now I'm adding my brand, as is tradition. I added these labels off camera just to make it a little easier for me to identify which is which. But this is how it works. You set that depth with the whatever chisel you want to use. You determine that angle and lock that guide into place. And then adding a little water to the stones allows the chips to fly away a little easier. And using that guide, you can sharpen your chisels or your plane blades and get sharp edges. As always, thank you all for watching this video. Hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to comment and like this video and let me know you'd like to see next. Thank you.